society. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Oh, I'm not saying it's alien, but it's alien. No,
This is the Strange Truth Podcast with Joe, Trevor, Brian, and today's guest, Tad.
Hello.
So I'm going to read a Project Blue Book report. This was a study done by the U.S. Air Force back in the 50s and 60s. This one was an encounter in Richmond, Indiana, so somewhat local to the Indiana State area. This was a sighting that occurred on May 24th, 1954 at 12:25 Eastern Time. An Air Force major flying a photographic mapping mission near Richmond, Indiana, observed and photographed what appeared to be a large, high-intensity light moving below his aircraft. The light traveled at a distance of 6 miles over the ground at a speed twice that of the aircraft. Intensive studies of the photographs were made. The studies indicated that the light was not a material object. And extensive investigations by the Air Force exploring all possible clues and avenues of approach to the probable nature of the object were made. The ground under both the path taken by the aircraft and the object were examined with a fine-tooth comb. This is the wording of the report. Photographs were made of the area for a study of ground characteristics or other clues. Aircraft flights, radar units, and other operations were immediately checked carefully with negative results. The data was submitted to a panel of scientists, specialists, which included astronomers, meteorologists, and a physicist. It was concluded that the sighting was a very rare serial phenomenon caused by the reflection of the sun's rays upon an ice crystal platelet formation. That's according to scientists. Although if you see the original notes in the Project Blue Book report, it's interesting to see that there are a couple blacked out things where the scientists have written in ice crystal platelet afterwards. So I don't know exactly what to think of this. But supposedly the light traveled at a distance of 6 miles over the ground at a speed twice that of the aircraft and on a different heading.
That's the part that makes me think that it might not be ice crystals.
Yeah, if it
They
sounds,
don't
it
usually
sounds,
travel faster than planes.
Well,
or
if
all,
it's
really.
reflection can move, but if it's on a different heading than the aircraft, that sounds a bit strange.
Well, and we're dealing with a major in the Air Force who I assume is probably an experienced pilot. It seems unusual that he wouldn't know when he's seeing ice crystal formations in the sky. I don't know. There's a lot of things that still seem to raise some questions about that sighting. It was in Richmond, Indiana, which is actually interesting because my grandfather would have been a sheriff at the time in that area. And one thing he told me on his deathbed before he passed away is that he'd actually believed in UFOs and things like that, and that didn't trust the government as far as.
Did he ever go into
what
any
their
specifics
official-
or just?
No.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I don't know.
I mean, yeah, especially if the actual paper report is involving blacking out and writing in, it's like, well, that's if they've changed their results, you print a new paper. I don't know. That seems a little weird.
I mean, if it was something redacted, what would be redacted about ice crystals?
Well, I mean, like, if anything's redacted, they're probably hiding something suspicious. I mean,
Yeah.
Possibly.
I don't know. I mean,
I do know ice crystals can look very weird.
Well, right, and I'm like, I can imagine the scenario where there's a particular time of day and where, dew frosts over and you don't see it, but the sun might reflect in it from above. But that doesn't seem like
well, I mean, this was
if
like
something is an aircraft. I mean, it's designed and the guy's trained to photograph the ground, right? That's what he's doing.
Right. Yeah, and that's what the
To not
plane
have
was set
heard
up
that.
for.
And also, it just doesn't seem like a reflection of the sun. If you're flying in the sky, seeing a reflection of the sun from the ground, that's not going to be on a different heading. It may travel faster than you, depending on if you're turning or whatever, but...
see,
Or if
one of
the
the reasons
slope's
why I wanted to
different.
bring this one up is because it's not the most convincing report. It's still one of the more better documented ones I've seen in the Project Blue Book report. I do notice they don't name names as far as their scientific team goes. That's not something that I saw in there, but
No, what year was this again?
So they
1954.
1954,
Okay.
May 24th.
team of named
This was kind of
scientists said ice
Around the height of the big UFO,
UFO
scare.
hysteria,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of UFO. There was a lot of activity, a lot of stuff around, and once something enters the public consciousness like that, you do also have a whole bunch of
Well,
nonsense. What
Yeah.
seems to be
Sure, yeah.
nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a huge spike in all these similar reports that aren't necessarily in the public consciousness.
but you get to see their methodology and how much the Air Force was putting into validating these.
Oh yeah, they were
I mean,
hugely
they were
interesting.
bringing in scientific experts. They were interviewing everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it was mainly the Air Force pilot, and I believe a few people on the ground that may have saw something as well. But it's just, and it's full of photographs in there. And
Yeah, but the photographs were
They're
so
underground.
yeah.
yeah, there's not much.
I couldn't even tell if it was a photograph.
Yeah.
Or what it was supposed to be of.
Yeah, why is that
Just
always the
old-
case too?
Yeah.
Black and white aerial
Photocopy,
survey
yeah.
photos
But that's the
there.
thing is even 1954 technology, if it's aerial survey, it's usually the photographs they're ending up with are relatively high resolution.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's a lot of times that happens too. Is by the time like photos get to where the common people can see it, it's blurred, and it's like that was a high res camera that took that photo.
Yeah,
it's
'cause-
been blurred. Since
Obviously,
then.
they were able to study the photos, so they have much better copies. But who knows where those copies are?
Yeah, and those old ground surveillance photos, a lot of times when they were printing them off the reel, they're huge. They take up like a room.
Right.
They take up a floor. So what you're seeing is probably just like maybe a very small negative of it or something, like
Yeah.
the actual full image is.
Oh, right,
massive.
right.
You would be laying it across a room.
Yeah,
So yeah, they would have very high quality.
you're talking film. Right?
Yeah,
As
yeah.
long as your lenses are right and everything's in focus, you got a big enough negative. Yeah, it's extremely high detail.
Yeah, technology hasn't changed much with film. Now that we've got digital, that surpassed it. But until then,
Sure.
film has always been the main,
Right. Well, right. And in 1954, it's like wasn't like like oh well we have the high res original, but this is a compressed JPEG of it or something, and you lost detail. It's like there's no reason that quality couldn't be carried through.
It's kind of like
I can
whenever-
show it to you later. I can see you later.
It was kind of like whenever you see like an obviously faked, like alien autopsy or whatever
Yeah.
on YouTube, and it's like
And
this
they're-
old scratchy film,
Yeah.
and it's like they had really good film cameras back then.
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
watch movies from back then all the time.
Right.
Why
And
would
then
it?
it's really easy to spot a filter. I mean,
Yeah.
Right. Relatively easy. Yeah. Digital filters.
Mhm.
Well, I think probably whoever was, looking at these reports had a much more detailed image they were looking at.
Yeah.
But I think just for simplicity's sake, they used a smaller image for the files, but these things weren't really meant to be disseminated to the public at the time.
Right.
So I don't think that they specifically were trying to hide anything in the report at that moment, but
That's possible. Yeah.
and it may have been a case that this was just ice platelets.
Yeah, that's a
But
possibility.
What I think is very interesting about that report anyway, is just how much procedure they go through when verifying it.
Right.
And the thing that
some
gets
of the other
me-
reports don't have that much detail in them.
Well,
It is still the supposed movement of it. Because, I mean, when you see things like ice crystals, that's kind of like the same effect as like a rainbow. It's like
Yeah.
Right.
kind of an illusionary thing. And it just stays where it's at. And if you move, it seems to kind of stay where it's at, But it doesn't ever, you never see a rainbow shooting across the sky.
No.
So just the fact that they specifically said it was traveling faster, twice as fast as the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On a
that-
different heading.
That is pretty
Yeah.
curious.
That seems to take a reflective phenomenon away. Though I've seen strange stuff. I've seen strange things in the sky though, not on the ground. but it still doesn't seem like that's what it is to me.
One thing to look up, if you ever heard of a crown flash, those look really weird. Look them up on
Crown
YouTube
flash.
sometime.
Tell me about them. What
Yeah.
They look like a searchlight in the sky almost, and they move. I'm not sure exactly the physics of it, but again, it's ice crystals and
Oh,
Whatever.
yeah, shit, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's kind of what I've seen
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
which seemed very much like an atmospheric effect,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, there's...
Mhm.
You're right. I've seen those.
And I've
as
seen them
well.
where they actually move too.
Okay.
That's odd. I haven't seen
Yeah.
it like move too much. Though they develop like as the clouds and atmosphere move.
But
they
you
change.
would think if you're just
Yeah.
seeing a reflection off of an object, that would have faded if it's moving over 6 miles at
Yeah.
like a
Right, and let me
Okay,
say,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
when I'm talking about the movement there, I'm talking about like side to side. I'm not talking about going through the sky.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, how high up was he? I mean,
Let me check the report
That
here.
sounds pretty high. The report
I think
right
it's-
here.
I think the
Well-
altitude is listed on there. I thought it was 6,000 feet. But
Yeah.
I may be wrong.
And he saw the light below him, right?
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, he's photographing the
Yeah,
ground,
because
and
yeah.
there's a light moving around.
6,000 feet, like, doesn't seem very high for ice crystals and shit, right? I mean, you gotta be way the fuck up.
Yeah.
I
I
if
would
they're
think
talking
so.
about atmospherics, and I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking of that. But yeah, sorry.
I mean, yeah, you gotta be,
That's certainly
you gotta be
valid.
way up there. Like,
Yeah, because the
the
temperature of the atmosphere doesn't cool that much until you get up to, what is it, 10,000 feet or so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like planes that fly at like 30,000, like their vapors turn to ice.
Right.
I mean, and that doesn't happen until they get to like their, what is it, cruising altitude or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, 6,000 feet doesn't seem very likely for ice crystals.
And it would have had to have been lower than 6,000 feet because he saw it below him moving, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a.
Well, yeah, he said 6 miles above the ground, and I wonder how that.
6
where's
miles.
the- how's that-
6 miles above the ground. That's
That's really
quite
low, but
Well, no, it's 6 miles moving overland. That's how far it moved.
Yeah, 6 miles.
Oh.
6 miles above the ground is like.
It was a persistent phenomenon for 6 miles.
for 6
That's
miles.
how. That's
I-
about how
Moving
high
twice the
commercial
speed of
airliners
the
fly.
plane. So,
yeah, that was
you know.
like 6. Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't say in there, but I imagine it was a jet. I mean, at the time you're dealing with 1954, you're probably using U2. Yeah. If it's doing ground surveillance, it's possibly U2.
Well, how fast was the plane going? Does it say?
It doesn't say.
It doesn't give
Yeah.
any details.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't say like height of the craft or the speed. It's just.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you
yeah.
what kind of plane he's flying either. So I imagine it's some kind of, classified surveillance on.
And this was 12:25 in the afternoon. So,
Yeah, it's
Reflect-
good
like-
light conditions.
like Trevor, like he mentioned before, like dew or frost on the ground, like that seems a little late in the day for like dew to be on the ground. Like even in Indiana where the weather is just back
Well,
and
and
forth.
and it was May too. It's
Yeah.
like it's
Mid-spring,
probably
so.
warm at that time.
And I mean, it's 1954, so like, the climate was probably a little more stable back then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, maybe.
We had just shot off a couple of nukes. I mean, yeah. that's all
Well, I mean,
sounds
that was
funny.
probably the beginning of the end, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have much to go on with that amount of information. Though it is also interesting that like individual scientists aren't listed on the reports. This team of experts says ice crystals, conversation over.
Well, that's how most of the Project Blue Book reports are.
Yeah, okay.
If you look through a lot of them. Some of them don't even have any kind of official Air Force commentary. They're just the report that was filled out by an eyewitness. And there's no, really notes on verification being done or anything like that. They're just someone's eyewitness report. And the Air Force used to have these reports that were like, if you see an object, what wind speed was it moving, where were you standing, about how far was it from the ground. They're very detailed reports, but half the time nobody fills any of that crap out. They just fill in they draw a picture of it and they write, I saw this thing at this time. It was going to the south. It was big. And that might be all the report is. So
Yeah, not
each of
everybody-
these are a little
yeah.
different. You know.
Most people didn't have cameras on them at all times back then, so.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't
Like
everyone carried a camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
But now that people carry cameras in their pocket, they're too busy looking at the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Looking
look at the
down.
sky anyway. So.
Yeah.
And honestly, the cameras on these phones are not very good for taking
No,
pictures
they're-
of things in the air.
Not necessarily, no. Oumuamua object was something that entered our solar system on about October of 2017. It was believed to be a comet at the time, except that as it came into our system, it started to slow down and then change direction rapidly. And there were questions about whether or not it was a comet because of the fact that if it had outgassing from the solar rays that caused it to change direction, we would have seen that, and we would have seen a aura around it like a comet, the comet coma, I think is what it's called. So you would have seen these indicators if it was a comet. And there's some question about how it could suddenly change direction without sort of like some sort of gas explosion, or
Isn't it?
they even said that like a tumbling, if it had some sort of artificial effect that made it like a solar sail, the way that it was tumbling should have made it impossible for the solar sail to catch the right way.
Doesn't a lot of this come from? Was it a Harvard professor?
Hold on one moment. There's some NASA data on it, and also
Well, there was a particular I think
Robert Work.
Harvard, I think, professor who was suggesting it was an alien.
right, yeah, he
Probe.
he went on record to say
Yeah.
it could have been an alien probe, which is quite possible. You know, if you did have a probe that you sent to a far off galaxy that was robotic or automated or something, you know, maybe that's why it changed direction, is it detected life. You know, it did its job, it did its sensor scan, and then changed direction.
And I think one of the problems is it was still tumbling when it either changed directions or sped up. whichever.
Right, exactly.
And if it was an outpouring of gas, that tumbling would have changed, but it didn't.
Or been neutral. It would have
Yeah.
just been all around it.
But they never did see any gas when it was going by the sun,
Exactly.
Right.
so they don't think it was a comet.
They reclassified it as an asteroid, but it's still,
It was an extra solar asteroid, though.
yeah.
Yeah, from another.
Not
yeah.
from the
Right.
Kuiper Belt or.
You had mentioned that the object itself seemed to kind of come out of nowhere, and what they're saying is it could have originated in the Vega star systems, but it would have been 600,000 years ago until it reached our solar system, and that Vega would not be in the same part of the sky at the time.
Right.
So there's some speculation about where it came from, but that it might have been from a totally different part of the galaxy. So
And there's a whole thing about its odd shape. It's really long and thin,
yeah, it's a very oblong-looking object.
which is
Looks like a bent hot dog flipping
Yeah.
in space or whatever.
Very dark, too.
Right.
So
Doesn't
albedo's like
reflect much.
98% or something.
Yeah. It's actually still in our solar system and won't be past Neptune until 2022.
Yeah.
oh, we should just go check it out. Then.
Well, yeah,
Out
just-
there and take a look.
Just take
It
the
took-
jaunt.
Call up Elon Musk and
Well, it took Pioneer, like 8 years to
Yeah.
get out to Neptune. So we'd have a really hard time building a spaceship to, like, catch it. You know?
I know, I'm just kidding, but yeah.
I mean, space is big. Like, space is vast. So,
Elon Musk can take his little spaceman suit and the Tesla.
But see,
He shot up
Drive
there.
out there.
Yeah.
what I find interesting about that though is because I'd read the same story, and again I don't think I've at least heard of and read other accounts of things similar happening. Yeah, like in the solar system, our cameras and stuff, we're looking out, we see things.
well,
But you're not
photons
talking
travels.
about Harvard professors aren't talking about it. It again stayed out of the mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting that a Harvard professor would go out seemingly on a limb
Well, yeah,
and, at least speculate. because he doesn't know a model that really fits it that's natural.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded it sounded more like more than speculation to me.
Yeah.
What he was saying that's I'm pretty certain. I don't know, but that was definitely his lean as far as an explanation, because it's like it didn't. It's moving and it's of its own accord without leaving the typical traces.
Yeah, it came in at a very weird trajectory.
And it's faster leaving. It picked up momentum in a way we don't understand. And we will probably. We're going to be looking at it for what?
For a while.
Another 600,000 years or something. Till it gets to the next star system.
We'll be looking for a while. With better and better accuracy.
I always call things the wrong thing. I want to call it onomatopoeia.
That's kind of what it sounds like. What is Hawaiian for traveler?
It's Hawaiian for scout. The word scout. But
Scout.
they almost
the media
named it Rama.
Yeah.
Rama.
Because of fucking Arthur C. Clarke book. Because duh.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. That's what they were
Because
going to name it.
that is exactly what the fuck it looks like.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
And so if you're talking about like aliens visiting us, like this is like scientifically for me, like this is the way they get here.
Yeah,
They
Arthur
fucking
C.
sleep in a cryopod for 600,000 years, get to a solar system, get warmed up, start up the reactor or whatever the fuck, which is how you get more energy to leave the solar system because you were actually powering things. You added internal power, and then jet off, check things out, leave the solar system, and catch back up and go to sleep for another million years or something.
But the story, the Arthur C. Clarke, he wrote, I think, a short story about this weird asteroid that turned out to be a probe or a ship or something. Mm-hmm. And basically, the way he describes it in his short story is pretty much exactly like this comet. Yeah.
Well,
Looked like a giant black
it was
pink
optimistic
dinosaur.
because the human race, like, they put everything together because they knew they only had one shot to build a spaceship to go see it. Mm-hmm. They could only send 2 people.
Kind of like 2001.
Yeah, those. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I assume their AI didn't.
and it was
know
weird.
the story.
They were weird aliens. You should read that book. It's awesome too.
They've been talking about sending a spacecraft to this object within a time frame of 5 to 25 years.
That would be interesting if they could do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But also, like, what do you get back? So
Yeah, to get there and it's just
now
a
what
rock.
does it look like? How
Right.
dim are those photons? How spread out are they in 25 years?
What if it turns out to just be like blue ice? You know what blue ice is?
Oh, the stuff from airplanes?
Yeah.
It's this alien
There's
shit.
alien blue ice.
Well, we learned something from it.
Oh man, that'd be nasty. But yeah.
But hey,
All right,
it's genetic material.
Where are you guys at? Is it a alien probe? I don't know.
I mean, I think so.
I think it's likely.
I think it's That
if aliens got here, I think that's a good vehicle.
Yeah.
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 Well,
I think
its
something-
behavior acts like a spaceship or something that's been activated.
But to
It's very strange.
to play devil's advocate, if it really did come from a place that far away, what did you say? 60,000 light years?
Well, that's only
600,000 light years.
But that's only the first pool ball.
Yeah.
That's only the first rail shot. Like, we're the second, and it came from somewhere before there.
right.
Yeah, it's just deflecting around all these solar
So you
systems.
think maybe that wasn't its first stop? In other words,
I think maybe they started up a reactor and steered it toward their next target.
yeah.
That's what I think.
It's definitely interesting. But here's another interesting thing about it, and this may be one of the reasons why it's one of the ones that gets talked about, is it definitely seems to be, has mass, and the way its propulsion, it's following physical laws, right? It's not breaking physical laws the way some other UFO we see in the atmosphere seem to do things, that should be physically impossible. This one's, it's maneuvering and propulsioning under systems that we understand and accept already.
Well, except that it's going faster.
Well, it is going faster. I mean, it definitely seems more powerful, but it's definitely not like bending laws, seemingly breaking physical laws. It's following laws we understand.
Well,
Which may actually mean that if this is how it moves, because that's how it, like, moving that slow. It seems like if you have tech to dart around in seemingly physically impossible ways that some of this other stuff works. Interstellar travel doesn't take this, eternally long thing that you have to sleep through. It could be relatively instantaneous. So this may be some relic from something more ancient that sent out a probe, and it's still running its course.
Maybe it was from a race that was around the same technological place that we are right now.
And imagine if that race, in the time since they launched that thing, have advanced to the point that they can practically ignore physical laws, and now are here beating their own craft, and because they actually found a faster way to move around.
Or that civilization's extinct.
That's a possibility too.
That's kind of
Because it's a
depressing to
long
think about,
time.
Well, I mean, think
also,
about our
Could be hurling
Voyager.
rocks around.
Our Voyager craft could be the how do you pronounce it again? Oumuamua.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our Voyager could be another civilization's Oumuamua.
Right.
Right.
By the time they discover
Yeah.
we're so far past that tech,
Or we're dead.
or we're dead.
Also,
Each other.
humankind is awesome because we sent them a gold record
Well,
with
yeah.
like music on it.
Right. A bunch of
So-
a bunch of little culture and art and
Yeah.
math.
And probably like a shit ton of bacteria.
yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, we didn't understand that. We're like, it'll burn up and probably.
Well,
maybe. I mean,
They take
I wanted to
some-
get panspermia in here
sterilize
too,
it.
because
Oh yeah,
I mean,
panspermia is an interesting theory.
I thought it was interesting because the
hypothesis.
Oumuamua object, I kind of got the feeling that maybe it's energized by stars.
by
So
solar
our
energy.
sun itself was what gave it the ability to accelerate.
Yeah, that is the
Right.
theory of the
So the
Harvard
solar
scientists,
sail.
Yeah, why?
is that it's a
When you
solar
say start
sail.
up the reactor, maybe they just got next to a reactor. I mean, that's
Oh, and
how-
then turned on.
Well,
But
now-
they didn't
Yeah.
need it to start. They don't have a nuclear
well,
reactor.
the subject
maybe.
of
They
the
just-
the subject
they're
of the
getting to
paper.
the sun,
Absorb some
charge
sort of
up from the sun.
radiation from
Yeah.
Now it could do something, shoot towards the next star that it's going to have to catch because it's all going to be spinning if it's going. I mean, it's a shot, right?
I mean, that could explain how it's been around for so long. Is if it makes it from star to star, it's like living from check to check.
That's
Yeah.
a cool idea.
So I just-
Hurling across these black
Yeah.
spaces, trying to catch on a star.
And the aliens-
wake up again.
Figured out like anti-inertial technology, so they're not puking the whole ride.
Yeah, that's just the deep freeze they can
Yeah.
mummy
The
tomb.
the
they go into.
scientific community did look at the solar sail possibility of the object, and this is what they had to say about it. There was a paper that was posted by two scientists, Loeb and somebody named Schumel Bailey, basically exploring the idea of it being a artificial solar sail. And what seems to be the issue, though, is the larger scientific community seems to think that there's not enough solar radiation pressure to explain the object's non-gravitational acceleration, and also state that the available evidence is insufficient to consider such a premise, and that a tumbling solar sail would not be able to accelerate.
Yeah.
So those are kind
Again with the gas, like a
what's-
comet,
Yeah.
because it's going in all directions.
Yeah.
Basically, you're
Yeah.
neutral. So,
Right. It's not just creating a jet.
you know. But it is spinning you real fast.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be interesting if it absorbed radiation
that's-
from stars.
Well,
I
it
mean,
does
it's
read
certainly
dark. It does. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the whole thing too.
Yeah.
It doesn't really reflect anything, and maybe that's
And
why
wouldn't-
it's just
Would the
soaking
solar
it all
sail
up.
by necessity
yeah.
have to be almost mirrored?
Well, the
Yeah.
problem is like, how do you attach it? Do you just put a
Yeah.
axle right through the middle of your tumbling thing, and then put the harness?
Yeah.
Or
you know, off
the
that?
whole the whole skin.
So if you deployed it, like you deployed a sail,
Didn't they have a
how do you
solar
take
sail?
care of the angular,
or maybe the
momentum?
sail
like,
is its whole surface, and so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter on the tumbling.
I mean,
It's
you
always
could've-
something
or
flat.
you reflect the thrust
Could've been a
somehow with your
slingshot
EM
effect
drive.
off of, like,
You
gravitational
know, you
fields.
collect all those magnetic,
That's also
you know, the
possible.
microwaves, right?
Right.
Get a little tiny bit of
Seems
thrust.
pretty dramatic.
But that does seem pretty dramatic for that. I mean, if it's doing that, it's getting a high efficiency or tapping into something deeper that we don't know about yet.
Well, the thing is, I think we're still trying to, well, especially like the Harvard scientist, the one who's saying that it could be artificial. If you're really going to suggest that, if you're really going to go that far, why assume it's a technology that we understand as far as a solar sail? Maybe it's something more exotic.
Yeah, or
Or
completely
easier.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
easier, some primitive,
made-
completely
You
different
used an
approach.
engine? How many
Yeah.
moving parts does that have? This has 2.
Actually, there's just a circle of praying wizard aliens that know how to say shit with their thoughts.
But you need engines.
It's steam powered. It's like steampunk aliens. There you go.
They're just doing spice up there, like.
See?
Oh yeah, man.
That's how they're able to travel so fast.
Atomized LSD, so they could
Turn into fish
hear
people
the sounds,
navigators.
hear the
Oh,
signals.
God.
And,
The
And
old
the
space whale
slingshot.
union. They
And
do
the
it
ship,
every time.
the ship doesn't move. They keep telling you that, and that's why they don't hang out because you can't understand. They used to be humans, you know. Like,
If we could get a piece off of that and study the whatever it's made out of.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
getting
would
a
be
piece.
Yeah.
Sure, that'd be great if we could go throw a rock over there to get a
Yeah.
grab a piece.
Yeah,
All right.
that's great.
I mean,
We're
one of
gonna
the
have weird
reasons.
magnetic properties too, so maybe
Yeah.
that is something that almost like it was made out of, what we build our spaceships out of.
One thing with the tumbling, that is one way to create artificial gravity.
Right.
If there was a civilization on
I
there.
was thinking that, but if they're talking about multi-axis tumbling, that's an interesting effect. That's because
Yeah.
that could be like a couple forces moving around, pulling you in a few directions at different intensities and stuff. That would be a weird effect.
How big
if
was
it's
this?
not just on one axis? I don't know. If
Do you
it
have
is.
that there? How big it was?
Yeah, hold on one second. It was about 100 meters by, let's see here.
and these are rough guesses because it's so dark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know. What? And Tad was saying something about the dark, or was it the obsidian something?
Oh, the Black Knight.
Yeah, the
I
Black
was
Knight.
talking about that earlier. I mean, I don't know too much about it. All I know is like.
So 100 meters by 1,000.
Oh, the Black Knight satellite. Yeah. There's a lot of.
That could be a discussion for another episode.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It's.
It kind of
Let's not get
starts
too far
off
off
interesting,
subject.
but then there's a lot of
All right, so
mythology
that's,
that's gone into it. And it's
Yeah,
kind of
The whole episode's worth.
yeah.
Let's get into
So a football field by
let's
10
get into it.
football
Let's
fields.
talk about it.
The Black
Yeah.
Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? It's strange.
Because there are definitely black satellite networks. These secret defense operations, spy satellites
Mm-hmm.
that we have in orbit. So it certainly could be one of those things. We've had them since the Cold War, for sure.
Well, this is a very supposedly, as the story goes, it was one of the very early satellites. It was found very early.
Yeah.
I don't know how many satellites we had up at that time. No, I'm saying this. I don't remember enough of the story. I know I've read enough that there's reasons to be very skeptical of the whole thing.
Okay.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of, like I said, mythology that's gotten involved with it, and things that just aren't true. That's been mixed in. I think the core of the story is somebody discovered a satellite, or thought that they discovered a satellite. And I think it was a circumpolar orbit, which itself is unusual.
Yeah.
Near polar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
That's what I'm looking at.
that's kind of how the story started. And I forget what year, but it was very early in the space age. And then I think it did finally get explained away. I don't remember enough of the story, but I know there's a lot there that made me skeptical. Like I said, I don't remember enough of it to make any arguments, but it kind of starts off interesting, and then the more you read about it, it's like, oh, okay, that explains that, and
Okay, so the theory is that it claims that there's a near polar orbit spacecraft that's of extraterrestrial origin, that NASA's been covering it up. And I know there's different things that have been spotted in orbit that could be this so-called Black Knight satellite.
And I know almost all those are debunked. The pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but also how much of that is maybe this was someone catching a black operations spy satellite
Sure.
that nobody wants you to know about.
Yep. When they debunk it, they recreate the picture, and now that means it's false. If it
Right.
can look like something else, don't believe it.
Well, and that we specifically have certain types of spy satellites that can disguise themselves as space junk.
Yeah.
That way they're harder to pick up.
What is the name of that little mini space shuttle we got right now? That's
Oh, yeah.
really mysterious. Nobody really knows what it does.
We have it's an unmanned spacecraft.
I think its name is like X something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think
like
it's
X-37 or
Is
something.
it NASA or is it?
I think it's actually the military. Or it might be joint between NASA and the
Well,
military.
I mean, the NRO has their own space program. It's the
Mhm.
National Reconnaissance Organization. And
Space Force.
supposedly the NSA may have some kind of, black ops satellite type of program as well. And I've seen declassified DARPA documents that deal with some of the things we've got in there, like drone swarm networks of microsatellites
Mhm.
that will actually hide as the space debris and then come together and form like a lens.
Oh, wow.
So you could spot
That's interesting.
That's some
Yeah.
fucking sci-fi
Mhm.
shit
Right.
right there, man.
Oh, did you see the six? I guess I'm going a little bit off topic, but it was a bunch of satellites that they launched at the same time. This was recently. I think it had something to do with Elon Musk.
Yeah, there's a SpaceX was doing it.
Yeah.
The dude's
They
always
had-
doing some crazy
Yeah.
project.
They did have like a rocket.
when he's not making Harambe
Memes.
music, yeah. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
he made a whole like rap song about Harambe.
Elon Musk did a
Yeah.
rap song about Harambe.
Yes.
How long has this been
Oh,
around?
yeah.
I've never seen this.
I
Is
think
he
it's
really a Bond villain?
I think so. Every time I start to like him, it's like
He's definitely a mad scientist type.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
I still kind of like him, but at the same time,
He's
yeah,
a
I
very
feel like he's a mad scientist,
he's,
kind of.
he's a very interesting character. Like,
Yeah.
He's almost like fictional. it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, hey,
Tony
if he
Stark.
gets electric cars to the public and actually changes the world, then good for him.
Yeah.
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 He could be a mad
Let's not get
scientist.
too far. off subject,
Yeah.
though. Where are we going on, Joe?
Oh, I was just gonna say, it looks like the legend itself, about this object came about in 1954, based on UFO researcher Donald Kehoe. That the U.S. Air Force has 2 satellites orbiting Earth that have been detected, and that no country at the time had the technology to launch a satellite. Now, the Black Knight name or label came into play in 1958 through 1965. There was a British program called Black Knight that was supposed to be a satellite launcher as part of the Blue Streak missile program. And it was announced, I guess, in 1964 as part of the Ministry of Aviation.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the British government, there was nothing ever actually put into orbit by this program. So, I don't know. That's where the label comes from for it. It's interesting because I actually didn't know a whole lot about the black satellite stuff until
I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, I'll have to, if I can find the article that I read about it, I'll send it to you guys.
it looks like there's a Time magazine report in 1960 where the U.S. Navy had detected a dark object they thought to be a Soviet spy satellite in orbit. But it looks like it was, according to them, it was the remains of an Air Force Discoverer Mark 8 satellite that had gone astray. So apparently just space junk. Maybe. I don't know. Once you get into like the early days of space exploration, there are a lot of interesting things going on. Misidentification of
Have you ever seen the
orbital junk.
any of the documentaries about the supposed lost cosmonauts?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that one girl.
That's so
There's like
fun.
this girl's voice.
No, yeah, the recording of the lady
Yeah.
burning up in
Yeah.
orbit. That is so messed up to listen to. Oh my god, her
Yeah.
screams are just like, ugh. It's like it makes you just want to rip your earphones out, man. It's like,
Yeah. That's very eerie.
yeah.
Yeah. It's possible. I mean, the Soviet government, if they did have failures in their space program, a lot of times they wouldn't talk about it. I mean,
Well, yeah.
you saw the levels of cover up that they did around the Chernobyl event, and that was just a disaster that happened on Earth.
Oh, and they're very mad about this new Chernobyl series. They're
Oh,
saying
yeah.
they're going to come out with their own. Supposedly, they're talking about coming out with their own version where it's an American spy that sabotages
Oh.
Chernobyl.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
I would. I'd watch the shit out of that, dude.
Well, that's some of the early theories about the Chernobyl event, is that Soviets did think it was a CIA agent or somebody had detonated a device to blow the reactor. And, I don't know. I wouldn't put it past our government to do something like that.
I really
But
wouldn't.
at the same time, I think the Soviets are just making up bullshit.
Probably, at least in that case,
No.
yeah.
They also have a tendency to do that.
Well, they're not the Soviets anymore.
Well, yeah.
The Soviets.
Yeah,
Even though they're exactly like the
they're not the
Soviets.
Soviets.
That's what we
anymore.
want you to think.
Old Putin.
Oh, in Soviet Russia, president assassinate you.
Oh man.
Dude, there's all like those pictures of him like on a horse with his shirt off, like hunting or some shit. Like, what is that? Those were supposedly like leaked or something. I don't know if those were like leaked or whatever.
Oh, I remember. Did you hear his comments about the supposed, sex tape with Donald Trump? And he was like, I would never think that Donald Trump would do such a thing in this country. But, but if he did, this is the best country to do it. We have the most beautiful prostitutes.
All right, Donald Trump does want to go to Mars, though. And he's going to.
But doesn't he think it's part of the moon?
Who knows where Mars is, to be honest with you.
Well, like back on the subject of the lost cosmonauts, man. Like when I first read about that, it was I think it was like a creepypasta or something that I read. But then I found out that it was real, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's like it was like highly possible that shit actually happened.
Yeah.
Like, there's like probably just like a satellite or whatever, some kind of craft orbiting the planet with fucking 2 corpses in it.
Yeah, and it was I think 2 brothers that legitimately monitored a lot of different satellites and stuff. They were amateur radio guys, whatever you call it. They had their radio telescope and everything, and their dish set up, and they'd already done like a lot of the legitimate ones, and then supposedly, if they themselves didn't fake it, which is another theory,
Yeah.
but supposedly, yeah, they caught. I think they caught a couple of strange ones. But the most dramatic is that lady that sounds like she's burning up
Yeah.
in the atmosphere.
Have
I have heard.
I've heard it before, yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard some people try to debunk that. Is that she doesn't really have a Russian accent exactly. It's more of an Italian accent, which is where they were from, I think. I've heard people try to debunk that, but I don't. I can't hear the difference because I'm not.
Right.
Yeah. Fluent in that. I don't know.
And with a lot of debunking too, it's like again, if your job is to not, it's just, all you gotta do is just say, hey, it kind of sounds like this other thing, and everyone's like, oh, so it's clearly bullshit. And it's like,
Right.
And
And for all
reproduce the sound or whatever in some other way, or just pointed criticism. And like you said, most people are like, well, I can't hear the difference, but now that's a discussion, and it's like maybe that's just out there.
Yeah, and for all I know, that came directly from Russia, just to
Well, here's some interesting details about the lost cosmonaut stuff, though. Is one that apparently Yuri Gagarin, the cosmonaut that's very famous, he mentioned that this stuff was a rumor because of the fact that there were 2 previous Vostok missions that were equipped with dummies, according to him, and human tape recorders, just to test if the radios worked.
Human tape recorders that say, I'm burning up!
Yeah.
Get me out of here!
I mean, but that sounds like another Soviet space program cover story, right? I'm burning alive! Gagarin was he was a big hero of the Soviet Republic, but also he was from time to time had to toe the party line,
Right.
spread some of that propaganda around. Now, there was a guy named Colonel Barney Oldfield in 1962 at a U.S. press conference that revealed that there was an unmanned space capsule that had been orbiting the Earth since 1960, and it was jammed into its booster rocket, according to him. So this is a NASA press conference where this was revealed.
What if there's a space capsule with just a skeleton in it orbiting around right
two
now that we don't even
skeletons,
know?
man.
Yeah.
Like,
They said it was
corpses.
something that was fired a year before Gagarin did his space mission, and it was part of the Vostok man missions. So maybe there was. I mean, there's certainly not much evidence against it,
Yeah.
other than the Russians saying, "Oh no, it didn't happen."
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very compelling story.
Yeah, you've got NASA.
I mean, they
admitting
shot
that
a dog
there
into
was
space, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
With no real hope of getting them back.
no, she just died. There's a dog over
Yeah.
a dog
we
orbiting the
shot
planet.
monkeys
Like,
into space
Yeah.
and stuff. I mean,
it's horrible.
the early space programs were pretty rough. We were just firing whatever we could get into a rocket tube up there.
Right. Will it survive?
They take a
Everything
jar of
did.
cockroaches up there at one point or something.
Isn't that in I think Guardians of the Galaxy when they're at the collector, and one of the glass cases is a dog with like a Soviet helmet on?
Yeah, and it says like it actually says Leica on it or
Yeah.
something. Yes. That's funny as hell.
It's like, hey, it was rescued.
That's wholesome. I love that. That was
Yeah. And then Howard the Duck at the end, of course.
Oh God, Howard the fuck. We could just do a whole episode about just like terrible movies.
That would actually be a fun
Howard the Duck
podcast.
is an awesome movie.
Howard the Duck.
Yeah, don't talk shit about Howard the Duck.
All I remember is that movie had duck tits.
And to each their own, Brian.
I'm not kink shaming.
Oh man. Like, did you ever watch Fritz the Cat?
Oh, I remember that.
God,
It's been
that
a while.
movie is fucking
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, apparently there was even a theory that there was a guy that was one of the designers of Soviet spacecraft, that his son may have been the first cosmonaut before Gagarin, and in 1961. But,
I am still really shocked that we went to the moon publicly
yeah.
without doing it in secret first.
Well, we had
because
to
we
rub
never
their
done it
noses
before.
in it.
Yeah. It just seems like, God, what a risk to do that, you know?
But, at the same time, maybe they felt it was something that they couldn't keep secret. The
Yeah.
moon's one of those objects that's so big that if you land anything on
Yeah,
it,
true.
someone might be able to see it with the right telescopes or whatever. They may have not felt like it was something they could keep secret. So you might as well.
But we had probes and stuff that had landed on the moon and stuff like that before that.
Dude, you didn't know that Stanley Kubrick
Oh, yeah.
faked the whole thing. Like, he gave us The Shining to apologize for that.
Have you seen Room 231, that documentary?
Yes.
Ah, it's a great documentary.
It
though.
is, though, dude.
Have you seen that, Joe?
It's ridiculous, like the whole thing about the floor pattern and like, oh, Danny standing up is like represents the Apollo 11 like rising up into space.
It's about I think it follows like 3 different people and their conspiracy theories about the movie The Shining.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know of it then.
Yeah, it's a really good movie.
Pretty good,
I mean,
dude.
I've heard a lot.
these guys are all really invested in their theory.
I've heard a lot of Kubrick's films have very Masonic imagery in them,
Mhm.
but I'm not real familiar about the other.
He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would join the Masons. But then again, he did do a movie about like, rich people's sex
Oh,
skulls
yeah.
and shit. So.
I mean, it's just Masons that have told me it has Masonic imagery in it.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't heard anybody else talk about it.
And oftentimes it's no more weird than just that. Then you just put some symbols in it.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean it has a darker meaning behind that. If that was the case,
But I mean, Kubrick was one of those directors where he most certainly had a lot of, imagery in every shot.
Oh,
There was stuff going on.
And that documentary
Tell you.
is the perfect example about that, because these three people have like such elaborate theories about this movie, and they've all got their own evidence, some more credible than others, but it's just fascinating that they can get that much out of this one movie.
It's the Rashomon of films.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a different take on it.
The one most plausible, I think, was the American Indian. That it's an allegory for basically the white man killing the American Indians.
Yeah.
That was actually a pretty plausible one, because it showed a lot of the Indian symbolism in the hotel and stuff.
There was, I noticed a lot of Native American symbols.
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, I should say Native American.
I used to think that was just because, like, weird shit happens because, like, they built it on a burial
Indian
ground
burial
together.
ground, right,
Like,
yeah. But the idea is America is built on an Indian burial ground.
It is.
Yeah.
We put it there.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
But I can't remember what that thing was that they were talking about, like Jack freezing in the snow. Like what's it? Like,
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Which guy?
I don't remember. Man. It's been so long since I watched that fucking movie.
Oh, it's worth checking out.
Yeah, Joe, it's on Hulu.
What is?
Room 237.
All right, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
And of course, the one guy is saying that Kubrick faked the moon landing. That's like the most famous conspiracy theory of it.
Yeah, they did a movie about him faking it.
Like a mockumentary where it was like it was real.
Yeah.
That was
That's
pretty
one
brilliant.
of those conspiracy theories I really don't buy.
That's also
No.
one of the ones
Yeah.
I really don't.
I feel like somebody.
I'm not concerned with. Almost, it's like I could see how that could be possible. I don't think they would choose someone famous.
Well, they would have to choose somebody skilled enough
That's
to
Well,
do
dude,
it.
true.
even if they
And Kubrick,
did fake
I could also
Yeah.
believe that if he was approached, might have done it.
Yeah.
But, and I could see why. Like, say it wasn't like we were in the rush with the race with the Russians, and it's all about saber rattling, all about showing capacity. So having this thing, beating them to the moon, was an important thing. I could see why that would be a thing. But I also, at this point, just don't really care. You know, like I believe we've gotten to the moon since then.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, it's easy.
And-
It's very easy to test. You
Right,
could just aim a laser beam at the moon and reflect it off a mirror that we left on the moon.
Exactly.
Or
but-
aim a telescope and see a flag that doesn't flap in the wind.
Right.
But the Russians also have a reflector on the moon, and they didn't go to the moon.
Well,
It's
what?
probably bigger than ours.
Everything's bigger.
I'm just saying that's
Everything speak out.
But also, like, why
Being
do
a
we
devil's
have that
advocate.
conspiracy theory? Like, they got
I
to
don't
the
know.
moon.
That's the
Then
thing.
I
I'm
encountered
not
this, and they're like,
concerned.
no, we did go to the moon, just not then.
Not
Yeah,
that
right.
year, you know. And
The only way I could believe it is if the idea that maybe we just faked the footage because of reasons, and you can like add the reasons there. Maybe we knew that we could the radiation would be too much for the film cameras.
Or maybe the
et
film they
cetera.
got back sucked, or it didn't
Yeah.
work, or the guy didn't stay in the pod to operate the camera.
Maybe it was a
But
backup
that's the whole
plan.
story, right?
Yeah.
One guy had to stay in there and operate the camera
Maybe.
while the other two got to go get on the
Yeah, maybe it was
take
a
the first
backup
step.
plan.
Galvant on the
So
moon,
maybe they
yeah.
just
Yeah.
all went on the moon. Like,
you guys-
we really need this moment. So
You guys
we're gonna
remember
do that
the letter,
stage.
right? If everyone died, the letter the
Oh
president was going to read.
yeah. I remember
So
that.
maybe like Stanley Kubrick just kind of did like he optioned the rights for like the failure of the moon landing. You know, and that's why it's never been seen. You know, they destroyed that footage.
That was the backup if it failed.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
they did it
but they-
fictional. America wins on top of that dead cosmonaut.
And then their next flight, and you better believe the next flight up there, they stage the things and make sure that everything's there that was supposed to be there.
Right.
Leave the footprints, get out of it. You
Now
know?
that sounds more likely.
It's, hey, look, we did it. We just had to. We needed this narrative. We needed to beat the Russians.
Well, besides that, like if Kubrick would have done it, I would have figured that it would be more, everyone would believe it, because he was such a perfectionist that he wouldn't
Yeah.
allow like the shadows to like.
Yeah, it wouldn't look as shitty as it actually looks. It would look gorgeous.
No,
It would be just perfect.
Maybe
Yeah.
expertly shitty.
Yeah.
the way it just looks kind of flat and boring.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not Kubrick's. That's not his work.
That's not Kubrick.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up the podcast here
Yeah.
soon. Is there anything last minute we should talk about?
I've got an idea of a case we should look at
What's that?
next time. I think it's called Cash Landrum.
I'm not familiar.
I'll send you links.
Okay.
It's one of the more plausible ones.
It's an encounter?
Yeah.
And thank you for listening to Strange Truth Podcast. And as always, keep your eyes to the sky.